Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Hope you are doing well, staying healthy, and staying safe. Like we talked about this session last night, uh, this will be only in English. We would not be talking in any other language. Uh, and the topic also, is around someone who is based out of US, specifically here in Bay Area, someone local, a case which has started to, I think, pick up pace, has been going on for a very long time, 4 plus years, and a doctor, a doctor who's considered as a god in at least by my home country and across the world as well, has been fabricated or I don't know incorrectly served injustice. Uh, we really need to talk about such things, and that was the sole reason why we also created this platform where we could make such voices be heard around the world. And that's why I'm really, really honored to have Dr. Vilasini. I talked about her yesterday briefly. On this podcast kind of setup, I'm going to talk less. I really want her to be the voice tonight. I really want to hear her story. I've read a little bit about it, and the brief write up that I've read makes me feel very insecure myself. Tomorrow, if I want to set up a business, I'll be scared. Tomorrow, if I have somebody who is practicing, any form of medicine, go through this hell, it'll be a nightmare for them as well. And it's just not for the person himself or herself, it's also for their families, how the entire family has to go through the pain, the suffering, and the agony. So without wasting any more time, I'm going to have Dr. Vilasini Ganesh on the screen. Hello, doctor. How are you?
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today on your show. I really appreciate it, Mr. Varun Kapoor. I also thank so much for the guest appearances today and all the guest speakers of the show as well. Thank you so much for giving me a platform to speak and to express my case of extreme injustice that has happened to me.
We
Thank you
will.
so much.
No, we really look forward to the conversations, and I'm really honored not only because I have you, but the panelists who are waiting in the backstage, and I'm gonna have them on the screen one by one, for
Okay.
sure, as per your guidance. But before I get anyone on the screen, Doctor, why don't you kind of give an overview? What has happened in the last 3 to 4 years? What have you gone through? And then we
Yeah.
could get more guests to talk about it.
Okay. In the last few years, I have been fighting an extreme case of injustice against me, which initially started, in 2013, 14, 15. The insurance companies, two insurance companies, Anthem and Aetna, were refusing payments. I reached out to the California Medical Association and I got their help for civil healthcare lawyers to help me recover the, denial of payments and denial of services. So I reached out to them and I got referral to two very good healthcare civil litigation attorneys who were looking into file the civil litigation cases against the insurance company. And as soon as the insurance company found out about that, they reached out to the Department of Justice in Northern California, and they had uh, filed a fake complaint against me, to a fraud complaint against criminal complaint against me, to avoid all the payments. The insurance company owed me roughly about $550,000 for all the services I provided. I provided full office and urgent care practice. I'm a family practice doctor, and I have a very clean record with the Medical Board of California. I've never been had any malpractice lawsuit. I have no wrongdoing whatsoever, and so my payments to my services were denied. And I was also taking hospital call in the nights and weekends, and the many nights and weekends I have served so many thousands of patients in the middle of the night and Saturdays, Sundays, and stuff like that. So in that case, I just turned over that to the civil litigation lawyers, and that in the insurance company retaliated against me with the criminal complaints of fraud, and the Northern California Department of Justice took over the case, and they initiated a fraudulent indictment against me and my husband and my family. And ever since then, I've been put through nightmares And also the Northern California prosecutors and the people, they try to blackmail me, they try to threaten me to take a plea deal. I said I will not take a plea deal. I did not do anything wrong, and I just only followed what the advice I got. And so I tried to stand my ground, and I said I will not plead guilty. I've done nothing wrong, and I want to fight my case, and I want to prove my innocence. And ever since, and challenge them in trial, in jury trial. And what happened was, in the jury trial, um, ever since I said that I refuse to plead guilty, my life has been turned into a horrific nightmare, really. And I've been blackmailed, threatened. I've been bankrupted from all my life savings, my family's life savings. We've lost our home. I've been through so much suffering. Me and my family is unbelievable. And I still stood strong, and I want to fight my case. And what happened in the trial is they did not prove the case. The prosecutors could not prove their theory of healthcare fraud case because patients testified. Even the insurance company, SIU agents came in and said, Aetna refused payments for Dr. Ganesh since 2012, and stuff like that. And during the trial, it was they didn't prove their case. But so then what they did was they brought 40,000 false claims from another doctor's office and fabricated that and showed to the jury as though I built all those things, and I did not. And during the trial, we could not catch the fraud. So after the trial, my post-trial defense attorneys discovered that there is enormous false fraudulent evidence of 40,000 false claims from another doctor's office. They filed motions, and they had three billing medical experts also review everything, whereas the government had no billing. The prosecutors never hired a billing medical expert. And also the Medicare, Medicaid was completely excluded from my case as well, which is a very strange thing. Also, I learned from the criminal defense attorneys. And after the trial, they tried to file all these, show the truth and the facts. And what happened was, and the trial court judge denied, the refused the evidentiary hearing. And I can have my attorney will explain more about that. And the other thing is also, the what happened is the trial court denied my rights, my constitutional rights. I'm an Indian American citizen, and I have a right to bring effective lawyers to my case. But what happened was, when I tried to bring effective lawyers to fight my case, the judge denied my Sixth Amendment rights to the Constitution, United States Constitution, three different times. And that has been a real, I never had an opportunity to argue my case or show the truth or the facts. And the sad part is, we were hoping that the Ninth Circuit was going to give us justice, which is the appeals court, which is right below the Supreme Court, and they have denied justice for me, and it is very heartbreaking. And I would like to have my attorney, Ms. Lisa Rasmussen, to explain more about what happened. Thank you so much.
All right. Welcome, Lisa. Welcome to this live podcast, and thank you for joining.
Oh, good evening. Thank you for having me.
All right. So, Doctor, why don't you introduce a little bit, about Lisa? Tell us a little bit more about her, and then, and Lisa, I would love to know, what are those technicalities that you would love everyone to understand around Dr. Ganesh's case? So, please go
Um,
ahead.
Miss Lisa Rasmussen is one of the top defense attorneys, criminal defense attorneys, and she's been fighting relentlessly for my justice, and she's been involved in my case at towards the end of the trial. And she also was one of the attorneys, post-trial defense attorneys, and she's the director of ACLU. And she also has filed motions, and she knows about the 40,000 false claims and what happened and the travesty of justice in my case. Thank you, Lisa. Please.
Thank you. So I'm on the board of directors for ACLU Nevada, and I have a private practice in Las Vegas. So I first became involved in this case in April of 2018 after Dr. Ganesh and her husband had gone to trial. At that time, Dr. Ganesh was kind of struggling with court-appointed counsel who had been appointed for her sentencing. I worked really hard to get my arms around what was happening, but what was clear was that there was evidence that the government had presented at trial under the premise that it was evidence of fraud, but it wasn't actually evidence of fraud at all. And it had nothing to do with either Dr. Ganesh or Dr. Belcher, her husband. They were claims that another doctor either had submitted or not. I don't even know that. And there were 40,000 of them. That's accurate. And that evidence was paraded around in front of the jurors at trial as if it were evidence of fraud. Unfortunately, Dr. Ganesh's trial lawyer didn't recognize that, and it wasn't discovered until after the trial. So that created procedural issues as to how do we raise this now. And then Dr. Ganesh and her then lawyer, and then me later, embarked on a series of attempts to present that to the court, which were all really rejected by the court. And then we litigated those issues, that this evidence I call it fabricated evidence because I don't know how else to describe it. It was evidence that the government presented of fraud that was not evidence of fraud related to Dr. Ganesh. This fabricated evidence was an issue we litigated on direct appeal with the Ninth Circuit. And the Ninth Circuit, it was not interested in it. And I don't know why. Interestingly, what you should know is the government's response to it was, yeah, we did it. But her lawyers should have noticed it at the time, and it's too late to bring it up now. And so it's not a matter of whether this happened. It happened. It's a matter of whether, to me, it's a matter of whether it was negligence on the part of the government or whether it was intentional. And so I've always requested an evidentiary hearing on that issue. And the reason an evidentiary hearing is needed on that issue is because if it was intentional, she has a right to a dismissal of the case. That would be a remedy and a penalty that the government would and should endure. So the intent of the government and how this happened matters. Unfortunately, no one's given us a hearing. The Ninth Circuit glossed over it. And so now she's in a position where her next stage is to file a petition for what's called writ of certiorari to the U.S. Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. But she also has other substantial issues, and that has to do with her attorney and the court's denial of her right to retained counsel of her choice, and the court's failure to make an inquiry, any inquiry at all, when she came to the court twice prior to trial and said, I need a new lawyer. This is not working for me. The court, the case law in the Ninth Circuit and all the circuits is very clear that there's an inquiry that must be made. That didn't happen. And so it was really disappointing on direct appeal with the Ninth Circuit when the Ninth Circuit gave short shrift to those claims. Those are federal constitutional claims under the Sixth Amendment. And it all ties back into this evidence thing because the government's response to all of this is, well, yeah, we did it, but it doesn't matter. Her lawyer should have noticed it before trial. But of course, she didn't have a lawyer that would notice it before trial because she didn't have a lawyer that did any investigation or any meaningful trial preparation prior to the trial. And that's how we end up here in this really unfortunate situation. Dr. Ganesh I'm going to be filing the petition for certiorari to the U.S. Supreme Court, but she also has a self-surrender date coming up in early November. Right. She has 3 minor children at home, and the situation is just a disaster, to be honest.
Indeed it is. And that's why I think, it becomes even more important for people like us to surface these things and see if we could, leverage more help, more outreach, and get more support for Dr. Ganesh. Before I get other, panelists, I see a few of them in the backstage. One question, and, there are chats coming as well. On a very high level, I don't know if you, Lisa, you want to answer that, or Dr. Ganesh. One of the questions that they're saying is, on what grounds did they, the first time, why did the insurance not uh, you know, reimburse the money? Why did they deny the payment at the first place? What was the reason? Anything specific that happened?
No, they denied the payments the first time, and we tried to re-submit those claims, and then they still did not pay. So the next step was I was advised to contact the local medical society and the local medical association, and that is exactly what I did. I contacted the California Medical Association, and they, in fact, told me, Dr. Ganesh, there's been a lot of doctors facing the same issues with Aetna and Anthem, Blue Cross, and the private insurance companies. So I'll give you referrals to lawyers, to two healthcare civil attorneys, Mr. Rocky Delgadio in LA, and also Ms. Heather Gibson in in closer to your Bay Area. So talk to both of them, and I just followed the orders and I talked to both of them. And Lisa knows about the civil cases too, because she was at a deposition. Lisa, can you go ahead and explain legally what was the issue?
So the legal issues with the civil cases were interesting. So the civil complaints that were filed by Heather Gibson were basically breach of contract, because she was under contract with these insurance providers to provide services at scheduled rates. And then when she provided the services and was submitting claims, and I believe that Dr. Ganesh can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that her non-payment issues go back to like 2012.
Yes, correct.
And then 2012, 2013, 2014, she was submitting claims and wasn't getting paid on them. So she'd resubmit and didn't hear anything. One of the providers, and she can remind me who, sent a letter saying, oh, we're not paying you. We don't have a contract with you. And then they later sent her a letter saying, I'm sorry, that was an error.
That was Aetna.
So was that Aetna? Yeah. And so it was clear that they had a contractual obligation to pay her for the services that she had provided under the contract, the agreement, to provide services. And I mean, I guess it's a standard form agreement, I would call it, where doctors engage with the group, the insurer, and they see patients at certain rates. And then if a patient came in and didn't have one of the insurers that the doctor contracted with, they'd be called like out of network. But at any rate, she had provided hundreds of thousands of dollars, like close to $500,000 in services, and had not been paid. And so then it appears what they did was they went to the government and said, well, we think there's fraud, so we're not paying it. And, you know, it just like they picked up a couple little claims of all these years of work that she provided and said, well, we don't think that this service was provided on that date. And there were like 5 of those. Well, the date was different than the date that was on the claim. And then they parlayed that, so to speak. I live in Las Vegas, so I always talk in gambling terms. They parlayed that into this giant conspiracy, which the jurors actually rejected. The jurors rejected that. But as part of their parading around the courtroom, particularly in closing argument, they came up with these, you know, look at these thousands and thousands of claims that really had nothing to do with Dr. Ganesh at all. So I don't know that if a fair trial had occurred, where that fabricated evidence wasn't at play, if she would have been convicted of anything. So, you know, that's kind of how it happened and how we got here. It really started with her pressing the issue on the money that she was entitled to that she had not been paid.
That's correct. And also during the trial, what happened was they normally present something called a HCFA 1500 form, which is the proof that the doctor submitted the claims. For those 5 patients and 10 counts, they never showed a single HCFA form. They only showed a blank HCFA form. And I did not know that during the trial. I learned a lot after the trial and after the horrific experience. But then my post-trial defense attorney and also attorney Heather Gibson, the civil litigation attorney, said, Dr. Ganesh, they never even showed a HCFA form. And a HCFA form is what a doctor signs and shows that they submitted the claim. And they never showed any of that. And in fact, you know, Dr. Rakesh Chandra had talked to other lawyers, and he's researched it in depth. And I would like Dr. Rakesh Chandra to speak about the HCFA 1500 form was never presented to the jury.
Sure. Before he speaks, I would love to welcome Dr. Rakesh Chandra, who's an MD, a lawyer as well, legal chair of the API North America. Welcome, sir, to the show.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kapoor. It's such a pleasure to be here. It is a really sad story. I just came to know about this, and Api came to know about it just a very short while ago. And it's a very scary story because what happened to Vilasini is important from the point of view that it can happen to any physician. And as you said in the beginning of your opening remarks, that it can happen to the point that this can be used very easily to quote unquote nail anybody. I have a GD, I have a LLM in health law. And when I was in the LLM course for health law at Loyola Law School, Institute of Health Law, I met a number of the prosecutors who were also doing the LLM to specialize in health law. And I can tell you that 99.99% of them were very good people with very high integrity. And they said to me that, Doc, if we want to nail a doctor, honestly, we can take little mistakes and blow them up, and you could really have a problem. But he said it is the integrity of the lawyers, integrity of the government attorneys, federal, state, that prevents this sort of problem from happening every day. But there are still isolated cases where this sort of thing happens. And of course, RP is very interested. We are very concerned because if it can happen to someone with a flawless record like Dr. Ganesh, then it can happen to anyone. And really, it's something that you have to be scared of because you do the best you can as a physician, just like any other service, doctors, lawyers, prosecutors, no office is perfect. Patients call you and make an appointment for Saturday the 10th. They don't show up, they show up on Monday. They make an appointment for 40 minutes of treatment or whatever. 10 minutes later, they say, no, I got to end, I have to rush off. Sometimes they come in for 10 minutes and it takes 40 minutes. You try to keep track of those sort of things, of course, in the normal course of business. But what ultimately happens is this, that things do go wrong. No doctor sits there with a billing chart and bills everything. You rely on your office staff. You rely on billing services. You do check and double check to make sure that things aren't wrong. But if a date goes astray or a session goes astray, it isn't fraud. It's what we call harmless error. Also what happens, and in the case of Dr. Vilasini, what happens is just as you may have made mistakes on one side where you bill the wrong date or bill the wrong amount, there are so many sessions where you didn't bill or you billed the lower amount. So when we do an analysis, we look at both, and 99% of the time it cancels each other out. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't fraud and there isn't blatant fraud that people do carry out, but my God, most doctors, making like Dr. Vilasini and her husband, couple of $100,000 a year, are not going to say, oh, let's pull another $50 from here or $200 from here. These are innocent, harmless mistakes. And when I was talking to these LLM candidates, most of whom were state and federal prosecutors trying to improve their career, they said to me that we recognize that and we do not harass doctors. The other side that I'd like to explain is that some years ago, we had a very excellent attorney general in Obama's time. And he had laid out, because doctors were so worried and concerned, he had laid out a whole memo which explains how do you prosecute a healthcare case. And what he said in a nutshell was this, that if Medicare or Medicaid is involved or is the baseline, then whatever they say and whatever strike force they use to investigate, that is the key. That is the baseline that you use. If Medicare and Medicaid looks at your case and they say that we're not interested, there's no fraud here, they usually isn't, because they're the most thorough investigators. They go through everything. We are worried for Vilasini because what a coincidence. Medicaid didn't find anything wrong. Medicaid didn't find anything wrong. The California licensing board said that we have no complaints. We won't take away her license. But I understand that the court imposed something on her where she could not practice. So not only were they going through all these problems, but with the current valid license, she wasn't allowed to continue working. So, they lost their home, they to foreclosure, two respectable middle class doctors living in a decent place are now living in a motel with in two rooms on a month to month lease. That is really really sad. One thing that is definite is that if no conviction had occurred, the case was going on, they should have been allowed to practice with a current license. So I'm at a loss to understand why were they not allowed to practice. She had nothing against on her record. We looked at her record; it was clean since the day she started practicing. So suddenly, I mean, it's very scary that here was a doctor doing well, but again, it wasn't some huge practice. It wasn't some big hospital or something. Cash flow is very important. People think that doctors make so much money, but the office, the staff, unless you have regular cash flow, even a small a delay in getting reimbursed can end up that you have to lay off your staff or you don't pay them or whatever. So she was justified in trying to recoup some of the money, and she tried very hard. And what I have been able to gather is she got these two very reputable attorneys, civil litigation attorneys, who went through her practice with a fine tooth comb. And attorneys are very careful. They will not take a case which has anything that is shady or fraudulent or anything. Both of them spent months analyzing her billing, looking at her charting, looking at what was owed to her. They accepted the brief that they would pursue this. And here's the interesting things. And as Miss Lisa will tell you, most attorneys will not take a case on contingency if they feel that there is even the slightest chance that something is not right. But they accepted it on a contingency basis because Dr. Vilasini by then didn't even have a cash flow to pay very much. So that's very surprising that two experienced attorneys from that area didn't find anything, and suddenly this only the companies that they were litigating and suing found a fraud with her. So we
Yes.
find that very coincidental. We've looked at the fact that she has multiple contracts with many insurance companies, Medicare, Medicaid. As I mentioned to you, Medicare and Medicaid are the quickest to come in after you and declare fraud or something. They refused to join the case, as I understand from her
Yes.
documentation. They said that they found nothing wrong and that they were not gonna be a party to it. So it's a bit coincidental that just these insurance companies that she was suing found anything. And here's the other thing, which is very scary, and that is that they filed this case and they were, of course, doing the usual back and forth, getting information. The first time that the doctor and her husband heard about anything was when FBI agents banged into their house early in the morning, frightened the children, uh, arrested both the doctors as if they were drug dealers or common criminals, handcuffed them and dragged them to court. And she kept asking, "What have I done? What have I done?" And they said, "We can't tell you anything. You will only be told when you go to court because the indictment is sealed." Now, what does that mean? Was she going to run off? Was she going to, husband has ties with the community. She's lived there for years. Are they fugitives? So that was very unfair. And again, it goes against the Eric Holder memo, where Mr. Eric Holder has laid out clear ways in which you write to a doctor, you try to explain what the problem is, and you try to resolve it at different levels, unless you find clear cut criminal conspiracies and so on. But there was nothing here. I mean, from my limited experience, I have not found anything like any doctor she was practicing. Maybe there were some errors. I'm not saying that they were perfect, but my God, to wake up one morning with FBI agents breaking your doors down, I just feel horrified. And I'm sure there are a lot of doctors who must be saying, "My God, I'm getting out of this. I'm not going to practice, or I'm not doing this," which is very unfair because 1 in 7 Americans today are treated by a doctor of Indian origin. So API is very upset. We are very worried, and we are going to reach out to the Attorney General and the Associate Attorney General and say, "What is this? We can't practice like this. We cannot be subjected to this sort of thing." I mean, I'm just worried. I have a couple of dogs. We are a family that belongs to the American Rifle Association. God, someone breaks into our house with guns, and Lord forbid somebody responds. They would. Can you imagine the disaster we would have? That's very unfair.
Absolutely, and hearing this is making and that's what I initially mentioned. Not only as a doctor, right? I mean, doctors are still very, very reputed. I mean, there are businesses, there are small, medium business owners who could
Right.
be framed into certain things, and they won't have the capacity even to fight such agencies. And we've heard stories. Being in US, we know how the whole insurance thing works, and you go to see a doctor and you don't have a certain checkbox mark that you don't have this particular clause in your insurance, you don't get service. But on the other hand, a doctor, if he or she looks at that patient, not considering the insurance, they will still be penalized. I mean, they are so finicky about the different clauses in the insurance. But here, a very honest doctor who has practiced, and from what I've heard, even all her patients vouch for her. They've spoken highly for her practice, and there's nothing that can go wrong. So why stopping her from even working while the whole trial was going on is
Yes.
again something which is
That's
outrageous.
right. That's right. I mean, I'm not a practicing lawyer. I do know a lot about health law, but I can't see any reason that she was stopped from practicing, because that way you're cutting off all ability to sustain yourself and your family. Look at where they are. They were a respectable upper middle class couple, and they're living in such a sad situation that it is pathetic. But again, what is scary is that it can happen to anybody.
Anybody.
We
Yes.
did look at the whole case, and we found nothing. There was one thing that I would like to mention is that Dr. Ganesh brought up the question of HICFA 1500. HICFA 1500 is the form on which you sign and you apply for payment. So you attach your bill to that, and you send it in. It's like going to a bank and saying, here's my check, I want to withdraw so much money. There
Mhm.
was no signed check, there was nothing shown. Everything, all the documentation that they're talking about was totally from one source, the insurance company that she was suing. I mean,
Yes.
I could sit here on a computer just now and produce all sorts of documents, but that's not proof. The preponderance.
Right.
And then here's the other thing: we took that information and we analyzed it, and I believe they sent it to a data expert. He said that this disk was made back when, because one of the insurance companies had a strike force, and they had made this disk because they were trying to look at a whole slew of past problems. And what happened is, I believe, and I'm not sure, but the way it turns out is that someone took that disc, which was totally unrelated to her practice or her husband's practice, and just threw it in there. They did make some changes, because this expert says that there were some places where names were changed, the billing code, the FEIN number, which is the doctor's particular billing number, had been changed. But here's the funny thing: as we analyzed that disk, we came to a point where there were some claims from 1988, and we said, "What the
Or
heck are
eight,
these?"
eight, eight, eight.
Dr.
Yes.
Ganesh was a teenager in India, let alone doctors. He wasn't even practicing. What were those doing in there?
Yes.
So obviously someone was sloppy, and we have pictures of those which we can show you, where from 1988. So someone said, "Okay, look, hey, I think," and again, I apologize. I mean, it's not that I was at the trial, but I think what happened is someone saw that things were not going that well, and they said, "Look, looks like she's going to get off on some of these charges, which are more serious."
Yes.
And suddenly they did what we call a data dump: 40,000, charges belonging to totally unrelated. But the jury sitting there, I believe, just there was so much data floating around. 40,000 is a lot. And as I said, they saw some things, they pointed to some things. There was the lawyer was totally ineffectual. He didn't challenge it. He didn't know anything. And Miss Lisa came in, and other people looked at it. But when we looked at it, we said, what are these charges from 1988 doing on that? And then it turned out that, in fact, there was a whole story behind it, which I could go into detail, but it was, in short, fabricated from another sort of investigation they had done, and they left out all these dates with 1988 and 8888 as some of the dates, and it was very funny. But then again, as Miss Lisa said, they submitted all that, they asked for that, and the government, I understand from what she's saying and from what we've been able to gather, they said, so what? It's no big deal. Of course, it's a big deal. The whole case hinged on that. I'm sure that the jurors saw 40,000 documents floating before them, and they must have said, look, there's something. But I'm sure if the jurors knew that it would lead to such a tragedy, they would probably have not. But these are simple, everyday people. And, it was hammered again and again. Look at this chart. Look at this date.
Yes.
Look at this doctor's name. Now, they've talked about a doctor's name several times that she billed in their name. When you buy a practice and the doctor leaves on a certain date, it doesn't mean that the billing for that doctor stops on that date. There are claims from before which were not paid. There were claims that were rejected. You'll keep billing in the doctor's name for quite some time because you need to get those monies that hadn't been recovered. So, I mean, it wasn't as if, as I said, they were successful, they were doing well, they were upper middle class, that they said, let's pull a few dollars from here, pull a few dollars from there. The other side of the coin that you have to look at is the billing staff who does this. They would have said, no, doc, we're not going to do it. They wouldn't have come there to support her and said she never asked us to misbill or do anything wrong. And on top of that, you see, if there was such a problem in her billing, two billing experts, attorneys, civil litigation attorneys who took the case on a contingency basis, do you think they would have touched it with a barge pole if there had been any fraud or anything? So I find it surprising that they spent several months. They took their time to analyze the billing, come up with a number. And here the government didn't get any billing expert, didn't get anybody, just put together something. And when they were asked at trial, that, well, what is the loss that your insurance company has suffered as a result of Dr. Ganesh and Dr. Belcher's thing? They said, we don't know. We didn't hire a loss expert. So it is very sad and very surprising, some of the things that have come up. And it is really an issue that concerns all doctors here, particularly Indian doctors that we represent through API, that, my God, if it happens to someone as qualified and as good as her, it can happen to anyone.
Absolutely. I just wanted to get Dr. Raj say a few words because I think he had to leave. But Dr. Vilasini, why don't you first talk a little bit and then let him take.
Yes, I completely agree with what Miss Lisa Rasmussen has said, and also what Dr. Rakesh has mentioned as well. And also, talking about the billing medical expert, Lisa had 3 medical billing experts when she submitted the post-trial motions, and also Lisa also had a billing expert named Mark Flores, who reviewed everything, and he wrote a report. His conclusion was insurance company defrauded the defendants. That was his conclusion, and that was filed with Lisa's new trial motion as well. And I'm thank you so much for everyone. And Dr. Raj Bayani has been so supportive as well from Federation India Physicians, and he's been in solidarity with API as well, and he has been so kind and very willing to help. I would like to hear a few words from Dr. Raj Bayani. Thank you, Dr. Bayani.
No, I believe Lisa and Dr. Chandra has covered your case very well, what has been done wrong. And it is heartbreaking, and it is saddening to see. At the same time, some people will feel a little upset that how can this happen in country like USA. It's a country of laws. It's a country where justice prevails, and when one of our own faces injustice, we all have to do whatever we can to reverse this. And of course, the time is running very short. Our best strategy as our previous two speakers have spoken, is we have to support Dr. Ganesh with the funds and go to Supreme Court and get the next action plan in place. So for that, I really appeal every one of the viewers that Mr. Kapoor, who has been very kind to host the show and give real voice to injustice to Dr. Ganesh, is going to share the link for the donation. And we all should do our best to support Dr. Ganesh morally as well as financially, legally, in whatever way we can, because that's all we can do at this time. We can analyze and dissect what went wrong, but the most important part is where do we go from here, and how do we reverse this, and how do we rectify this situation. So this is where we all have to put our efforts and energy. And really, Lisa and Dr. Chandra has been doing a wonderful job putting the team together and working to reaching out lawmakers and attorney generals and Supreme Court. I think these are the three venues we have to keep fighting. And we all with Dr. Ganesh and every one of you who is watching, please share this story to everyone you know on YouTube, Facebook, so that more people know about it. I think better it is for the awareness of this problem, which anyone can face, and everybody needs help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bayaneji. I really appreciate your help.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for your support.
Of course, we are there for you.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you.
We are with you,
Right.
Dr. Ganesh. Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Thank
Find
you.
find comfort in see how amazing people are here to show support and solidarity. And I could even read in the comments, right? I mean, people are really feeling the pain. And there's been some data also shared here, which I would also like to highlight before we take the next speaker as well. And Dr.
Okay.
Raj, feel free whenever you have to drop
Thank you.
off, you can. Um,
Thank you.
so, you know, Norman Clement, he's been sharing some data as well, which is really heartbreaking. 9% of the doctors uh, of color represent 36% of criminal indictments, which is really bad. Black doctors are 4%, and they're part of the 20% of indictments. Indian doctors specifically are 5% of the population, but still they're 16%. So I don't know. I mean, to a common man like me, if I'm reading this, if I go by these facts or these numbers, this is nothing but racial discrimination or some form of discrimination that's happening for people of color. So really, really sad to see this happening. Like what Dr. Raj said, in a country like US. We have few more people. Dr. Ganesh, I could have them all together, or howsoever you
Yes,
want.
please. Go ahead and we can introduce one by one. Um, Dr. Roberta Gebhardt is here, and she's been very supportive of me. She is part of the PJE team, and she's also part of the American Women's Medical Association team, and she's been very supportive of me. And then I have Dr. Pringle Miller, who's part of the PJE group, National Group for Doctors, Fighting for Doctors, and she has been also very supportive to me and trying to coordinate her thing with API and other organizations as well. So please, I would like both of you to speak for me. Thank you so much.
Why don't you go ahead, Dr. Miller? You go first and explain what PJE is as well.
Sure. So I know that we're short on time. So PJE stands for Physician Just Equity. And like Dr. Ganesh said, Physician Just Equity is a 501c3 organization that was founded a year ago, really for this purpose, to advocate for physicians and surgeons who are being treated unjustly, either in their work environment or in Dr. Ganesh's case, with the legal case that she's in. One of the things that I have been alerted to as a result of getting to know Dr. Ganesh and her situation, which is very scary, is that she is not the only physician that has been retaliated against by private payers, and that the government has been used as a weapon against physicians who try to claim the monies that they are due. And I think, that is a very suspect and scary place for physicians out there in the workforce. And I really, I mean, everybody has been very empathetic, and I have heard a lot of horrible stories through my work with Physicians Just Equity, but I think Dr. Ganesh's story is really one of the most horrific and mind-boggling ones. I just want to also emphasize what has been said before, which is that there was nothing that the investigator at the Medical Board of California could unroof in terms of her medical license that would warrant changing her status, her medical license status. And I think one of the things that's also been a real devastation is obviously the loss of her practice and her livelihood, but she touched many patients' lives through her years of practice in her community. She was loved by her patients, and she was plucked out of her position in her community as a physician. And nobody has really said anything about the impact of that on her patients, and obviously the reciprocal impact of her losing those relationships that she had fostered over the years, and her patients not having their primary care physician anymore.
Sure.
That's right. That's right. Many patients came to court and they tried to express their support for me, and they wrote letters to the prosecutors. They also came to the court, and I literally, talked to them and said, "You guys must be ashamed of yourselves and whatnot." And they tried to help and support me in every way they possibly could. And they were also very upset that their patient care, because I was a primary care and I was an urgent care physician. So when they get sick or when they would come and see me, and they were very upset that they have lost the continuity of medical care. They couldn't find doctors for several months and things like that. So they have been patients faced a very lot of hardships as well. And they expressed to me, and they would always ask me, "Dr. Ganesh, when are you coming back? We'll do everything we can to support you. We really, really miss you." And I do miss them too. Yes, I do miss them too.
As a family physician, I can vouch for the fact that patients really do look up to their primary care doctors, and they're the ones that are there for them. On a Saturday morning when they have an earache and
Yes.
come in their day off to come in to see them, and then all of a sudden they have no doctor, and it's not easy to find a physician these day and age. And then all the way through COVID, we have two perfectly capable physicians that are unable to practice because the judge said they can't practice, even though the medical society could find no wrong with Dr. Ganesh. So
Right.
prior to even
I
hearing
had
so when I initially heard about Dr. Ganesh's case in July, prior to that, I had actually heard that the state was going to trying to come down harder on the physicians in the state, because they felt that the medical society and the medical board were not hard enough on the physicians and were letting them get away with too much. So I think she possibly was caught in the feeling of whoever that the California physicians had it too easy, so they were going to make her an example, is what I think. And I would also encourage people to help out with the funding of her attorneys through the GoFundMe account. She does have a Supreme Court case that's coming up, hopefully, and then also if she does, if she ends up going to prison, a 2255 hearing, a habeas corpus review, and she will need support to get out of this mess. She's going to need legal support. They lost their house, but not only did they lose their house, they lost all of the contents of their house, and then they had to move into an apartment, and then they were evicted from the apartment, and now they're living in a hotel. So anything that you can do to contribute to the GoFundMe account would be very helpful in both especially in her legal case, to help support, so we can keep her out of jail, hopefully, and get the Supreme Court to take this seriously.
I just want to also ask if Dr. Ganesh, is there still going to be an event in Washington, D.C. coming up? Is that something that should be mentioned?
I believe that I talked to the RP president, Dr. Anupama. I'm not sure if she's here today. She was supposed to join in, I guess, and join in today's today's meeting. And she said that if she's, I don't know if she's in the back in the studio room or not, but she definitely mentioned something on the 27th that she's going to be in DC, and she said we can certainly do a protest in front of the protest in the Capitol, or let the senators and congressmen know that there is an extreme case of injustice and against Indian American doctors, and we have to get justice for my case. So I believe she's planning on something, but once I know about it, I plan to let everyone know. But something is planned for October 27th, I guess, in DC, and I get more information, I can post it on the site.
Right. And I like to kind of just at the end of the session, but Dr. Chandra, I mean, from your experience as well, and I'm gonna go to Lisa as well, but from the the legal aspect as well, as also as a practicing doctor, how do you see future doctors? While we continue to speak for Dr. Ganesh, we will continue to raise awareness, but how and what do you suggest to other practitioners like her to safeguard themselves and not get into this situation?
Well, Mr. Kapoor, my initial advice to everyone would be, and something that we are following also, is to get out of billing, join the VA. There are so many other contractual obligations you can do, get a salaried position, because honestly, people like Dr. Ganesh are getting fewer and fewer, who really care about their patients, who are out there right on the front lines. But if this is the reward you get, my goodness, it's not worth it. And who loses are the patients, because you see the relationship they form with people like Dr. Vilasini, who are so caring and loving. It's not just a doctor-physician relationship. They rely on you, as Dr. Roberta said. People come to think of you as an integral and important part of your family. So I think everybody loses when we have a situation like this. That's one thing. The other thing I would say to everyone, that should you decide to continue practicing, you really need to lawyer up. You need a local lawyer who can come at like a quick phone call. He's at your office, that somebody's come with a search warrant or somebody's come with something. You need a very good healthcare lawyer who can be on retainer and advise you if you even get a letter or something. And then you need a licensing lawyer. So you need a team of 3 lawyers to almost be part of your team if you're going to practice. And I don't know, I didn't become a doctor I did law because I was interested and I love what I do, but I didn't sort of come into this field thinking that, my God, I have to have this phalanx of lawyers to protect me from everything. It's very sad and very scary. And a lot of people are going to hear Dr. Vilasini's story and say, you know what, I was thinking of becoming a family practitioner, but I think I'll just do a specialty and go and join the VA so that, I don't have to deal with all this. But it's a loss for the patients, because if more and more people like her don't come into practice. I have a very lovely family physician, but he works through what we call a federally qualified rural health plan. So good luck suing him, because he is covered by the Federal Tort Act. And I asked him once, why don't you open your private office? And this is exactly the reason that he wouldn't do that, because, do you need all this? At this point in her life, after a successful career, board certified, loved by her patients and her staff, she's in total bankruptcy. And not only that, she is going to prison for 63 months, which is a travesty of justice. It's like a drug dealer. She never even had a parking ticket, let alone anything else. My God, I think it's so unfair. I do want to mention 2 things, if you don't mind, Mr. Kapoor, which are of immediate concern. One is that, so here we are with Dr. Ganesh, but nobody's listening. Who do we talk to? Who do we say that, look, in America, this can't happen? We're trying to see who can, at this point, take a look at the whole case and say, okay, somewhere something went wrong. We're not able to find anyone. The Ninth Circuit gave a summary unpublished opinion. So we asked, I believe the lawyers asked for an en banc hearing. That means all the judges hear the case and give an opinion. They didn't do that. An unpublished opinion means that they gave an opinion which does not carry any weight. It's just a by the way thing. They blew her. I think, I mean, I apologize if it sounds wrong to the Ninth Circuit, but it's almost like they blew her off. Here she is facing 63 months in prison. The other concern that we have as doctors is, I understand that they did whatever, but the three little children, for 5 years, they have been traumatized, with what happened. Can you imagine being a 4-year-old child or a 3-year-old child and FBI agents break into your house and arrest your parents? I mean, those children are really traumatized. They have severe psychological problems. And the difficulty we're facing is that in addition to everything else that the trial court subjected them to by not letting them get a proper attorney, by not having proper representation, that they want both Dr. Vilasini and her husband, Dr. Belcher, to start serving their sentences concurrently. That never happens. I mean, with these children, if both the parents go off to prison, those children are going to be, I hate to use the word, basket cases for the rest of their life. Isn't there any compassion? Isn't there any feeling that those poor children, you're subjecting them, these are American-born American citizens, and you're going to suggest and subject them to that? We are trying so hard that please, okay, whatever we're doing, Dr. Vilasini came to us just a month ago and we're trying to do everything. People don't answer phone calls, people don't respond to us. But my God, we have to find a way to split their sentence so that at least one parent is with these children. What have these children done wrong? They're such sweet, innocent children. Every time I try to talk to them, they're socially and otherwise so regressed that I am sure that with time, unless they get long-term psychological help, we are going to have problems. So one of the more immediate things is that we are trying to get their sentences staggered so that at least one parent is with the children and doesn't lead to them being traumatized even further. So no one seems to care in the justice system. No one is listening. The court has given its opinion, whatever it merits or demerits. The Ninth Circuit has blown it off. The chances of the Supreme Court taking up her case, quite honestly, I hate to say this, but are quite low. I wish and I hope they take it, but can you imagine what's going to happen to those children if both the parents, November the 10th, are incarcerated? She has an 82-year-old mother where she is the sole caregiver. The lady can't even cook for herself, let alone do anything. It's going to be a travesty. What has she done to deserve that? I mean,
Yes.
if I could understand why she is being punished to this extent, I have looked through her papers, I have sifted through them. I can't find anything. So maybe if someone can show me what was this egregious act that she did, that she and her family are subjected to this, I would really like to know.
Horrific. Right.
Yeah. So, just maybe a couple of more questions, Dr. Vilasini, and anybody can chime in here as well. There were a couple of comments, and going by that, one thing people are asking is, what about the judge? Why has the judge given such kind of conviction? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes,
But
it's a very
I'd like to talk, Vilasini, let me talk about that if you will.
Yes.
yes.
I think a couple things that have been said are accurate. The Ninth Circuit blew her off. That's absolutely accurate, and it was really disappointing. A lot of cases the Ninth Circuit is very into it, and even in cases where I don't prevail, I can tell that they've really thoughtfully considered it, and that didn't happen in this case, and it was really disappointing. And then the request for en banc reconsideration by the full Ninth Circuit, not just the panel of 3, was denied. But going back to the trial court, and going back to just a couple of things that were raised earlier, in particular the data on race that Dr. Chandra was talking about. And I'm really glad he brought that up, because I look at this obviously as a white person, an American person, but it is always stricken me that Dr. Ganesh was so misunderstood culturally in this case on so many levels. And I know, because I've been doing criminal defense for 22 years, that there's always a bias against my racial minorities. Both Dr. Ganesh and her husband are minorities. And I know that factored in this case. And it oddly even factored in with the judge, who herself is a woman of color. She's Korean. And it was so disappointing when I came in late in the game in this case, but I have just witnessed this horrific hatred almost, and just mistrust of everything Dr. Ganesh says. We came in even more recently with the argument that we need to stagger the sentences for the children, and Judge Koh started to say okay and to do it, and then she just immediately changed her mind and made a whole bunch of really inappropriate, undeserved, not warranted comments about Dr. Ganesh. And that is the kind of racial kind of predisposition that has permeated this case. And it's really like it's a classic example to me of racism, and how it has always played out in our justice system, and how it continues to play out in our justice system.
Right. And I'm reading a few more comments, and of course, I would love Dr. Ganesh to also chime in to what Lisa mentioned. Doctor, I think when we were also talking initially, there were a couple of things you mentioned around how you yourself felt that you were being discriminated. It could be racial,
Yes,
it could be any kind of discrimination. Do you want to talk a little bit more?
yes. Yes, it was, I did not understand why I was being treated inferiorly in the justice system. I did not understand why my rights were violated, and not once, twice, but three times. My Sixth Amendment rights, when I tried to bring effective lawyers, were blocked. And there were a couple of few court proceedings that I went in without even a lawyer. And I did not know that was so horrific, because until Lisa came and said, look, you cannot go represent yourself. You need an attorney. And I said, I didn't, either. I don't know. I just felt like I never got treated right. I never got treated equally. And there's so much hate, bias, and prejudice against me in the legal system. And especially in the amount of hate and thing I experienced, it's just, it's just so sad. And like Lisa explained to me, there has been definitely a part of racial discrimination is very much out there. And our case is a perfect example. Greg is a Black American. Greg, Navy, U.S. Navy captain, had 20 years of honorable service and everything, and he is being charged with, hit with this charge. And I am an Indian American woman of color, and I've been discriminated. My rights have been violated so many times, and it seems like nobody cares about it, and it's like they're blatantly violating my rights, and it's like you cannot have a lawyer, you cannot, have a counsel of choice like that. So I just like, it breaks my heart to see, as much as America is a land of liberty and country of freedom, there is no freedom for racial minorities in this country. And it just breaks my heart.
Mr. Kapoor, I'd like to make a point here, and I think Dr. Roberta and the other doctor will also back me up, because they have heard the comments myself. I don't know exactly what happened. I think that perhaps the total ineffectiveness of her initial attorney became obvious to Dr. Ganesh before the trial. He did not call any witnesses. He took a huge retainer from her, didn't do any research, did nothing. In fact, went off on vacation. And
Right.
the judge herself, as I was reading through the reports, commented that he's lazy, that he's not very good. So I'm surprised that she was not allowed to have proper legal counsel, because a lot of this could have been prevented with effective counsel. And the point I want to make is that when you get into a situation like this, don't hide. Reach out to your peers, reach out to API, reach out to the Federation, Dr. Bayani, other people. We have a list of lawyers who have done a great job and have prevailed. So choosing a good attorney is very important. But the other part that we find very sad and upsetting, again, as I spoke about the children, is the fact that Dr. Vilasini, if she doesn't mind me revealing this, but she has a severe blood dyscrasia,
Yes.
blood
Yes.
illness, and she cannot be given a COVID vaccine because you see, if she gets a COVID vaccine, she could probably have a bad reaction, probably even die from it. So the problem is that somewhere in the transcript, it is that I don't know exactly what transpired, but someone said that, well, COVID is prevalent in the California and the federal system in California. And if this doctor goes in there, she could get COVID and die. And the general attitude was, so we don't care, let her die. I mean, that is
Wow.
unforgivable. I mean, again, I keep asking myself, what has this young doctor done to deserve this sort of treatment? I mean, what has she done wrong?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, and
we hear of these criminals, right? You mentioned about these drug dealers, the peddlers, and all that stuff. There are people doing so much crime right across our neighborhood, and they're roaming freely. And here we are talking about a well-reputed, well-respected, well-loved doctor, a primary physician, and
Board
even
certified,
that.
board certified, properly licensed,
Exactly.
never got a single complaint with the licensing board. I'd like to know, what has she done that she's and her husband are going to be locked up for 63 months, traumatizing those children and traumatizing this whole family. And Mr. Kapoor, what is the scary part is, my God, if it can happen to her with an unblemished record, just think what could happen to someone who may have made a mistake or something here and there. It is very frightening.
That's true. Very true. Sorry, Dr.
I,
Ganesh was saying that.
I would like to have Dr. Pringle and Dr. Roberta watch the, Lisa was so wonderful and she let them watch the Zoom hearing and they saw the Zoom hearing with the judge and they can share their experiences. Go ahead, Roberta and Pringle. Please let know how much hate the judge spewed against me during when you guys were watching on Zoom. Go ahead and say that, please.
Well, I'm pretty devastated at the lack of compassion, I'll have to say that. And I was present watching virtually the sentencing hearing. I still am perplexed by how it went from trying to stagger the sentences to not staggering them at all. It seemed like the decision not to stagger them was completely illogical. And I don't understand how in the court, it did seem like it made perfect sense for the sake of the children to stagger the sentences, but then they ended up not being staggered. So I don't understand that. I mean, the whole case is just unfathomable. I don't know how you can, the disproportionality of whatever the current indictments are to the sentencing is just something that I don't think anyone can wrap their heads around. But I would say, in response to Dr. Chandra, in looking at cases of injustice like this, I think it's important to remember that it isn't so much in my mind about what Dr. Ganesh did do or didn't do. It's also about the defense and the prosecutors and the fact that she was just trying to get paid for the services that she was rendering. So she didn't do anything wrong here. What is unfortunate is that the individuals that have been in the wrong have sort of weaponized the system against her in a way that we see happening, as has been very evident in the chat and in the commentary, disproportionately happening to people of color. And so I think, we're all on board with the fact that we need to do as much as we can immediately and in the next weeks and months to try to bring justice to Dr. Ganesh and her husband, Dr. Belcher, because this is wrong. It makes no sense. There seems to be good evidence to the contrary of what's been presented. And I think the other thing that's worth noting, and the way that I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that there needs to be an evidentiary hearing, which was stated before, but is it a motion that needs to be submitted for
Yeah,
that?
it needs to be litigated in the 2255, the habeas corpus litigation, if we don't prevail at the U.S. Supreme Court. So the really most important thing right now, I think, is for her to be able to have funds to secure what I call post-conviction 2255 habeas corpus counsel, because the chances of the Supreme Court taking the case are always slim. I mean, I would love to be pleasantly surprised. I think the issues are great, but with this Supreme Court in particular, I don't know what's going to happen, and she absolutely needs counsel for that next step, and I can't do it because I represented her on direct appeal, and it would be a conflict. Because she might say that I did something wrong, and she has every right to say that. So she needs independent counsel to take on the next step and to show the new evidence that we just got from the forensic analysts that shows that the documents the government used at trial were actually tampered with, or they were modified just prior to trial. That issue has never been presented to the court because we just got that evaluation. And that's what's so important for her next step.
All right. And I'm going to flash it one more time, guys. As much as you can, support her in this fight for justice. Since we are almost top of the hour, I'd love, again, all of you to kind of, say the last few words before we end the session. And I've already promised to Dr. Ganesh, before, I hope, the 10th of November, things change before that. That's my personal wish as well. But we will definitely be doing a follow-up. We will also be getting more people. We are trying to reach out to certain, influential people as well to see, how and what can be done. There was actually a suggestion here by Dave, who's suggesting, and he is actually volunteered as well, that he's going to reach out to Dr. Gupta on CNN to do a kind of a program, if possible, ASAP. He's going to reach out, and he says Api should also reach out, but he's anyways going to do it. So thank you for that, Dave, for that suggestion. As well as there are other people who are suggesting, you should put this video link on the GoFundMe page as well, so that it reaches out to more people. And but let's start with you, Dr. Roberta. Anything you want to say as a message, obviously in support of Dr. Ganesh, but for people who are watching, who'll be watching later, and love to hear what you have to say.
So I just want to say that I do support Dr. Ganesh, and that I hope I'm concerned about her family, and I'm concerned about her own well-being if she has to go to jail, and I certainly hope that everyone who's able to donate to the GoFundMe account will do so. And also, if there's anybody out there that can do that knows anybody that can do the 2255 habeas attorney work, if they could reach out, that would be helpful as well. And we're here for you, Dr. Ganesh, in any way that we can be.
All right. And thank you once again, Dr. Roberta, for taking out time. I know you are on the East Coast, so this definitely means a lot to Dr. Ganesh as well as to me as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Roberta. I truly appreciate your help, and I'm so grateful for you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything
All
I can
right.
do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
so
for
much.
having me on.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for being here today and supporting me. I truly appreciate your relentless fight for justice. And I'm truly praying that the Supreme Court will take my petition. Thank you so much.
All right. Pringle, you want to say something before we go to Dr. Chen? You're mute. You're mute. You are still mute.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Mr. Kapoor, for having us on and for highlighting Dr. Ganesh's story. I think that I'm hoping that this will be widely viewed and we can continue to sort of have a reverberation of shining the light on the injustice that's happened to her. We just need to all work together to bring justice to her and to make her whole. It's just been horrific to know what she's been through, she and her family. So thank you for providing the platform. And
Sure.
Physician Just Equity is behind her and would like to do as much as we can to support her and her family.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pringle. You guys have been very supportive. I truly appreciate everything you've done for me, and thank you so much for visiting my family yesterday all the way. I truly appreciate it, and you got to see the real us. And thank you so much for your support, Dr. Pringle.
All right, Lisa, last few words.
Thanks again for having me on. I think these are such important issues, and I just this concept of the private companies using the Department of Justice to weaponize against doctors is what's at issue, and it can happen to anyone, as Dr. Sandra said, and it will continue to happen to people, and it will happen to minorities in greater scale. So I think that the work that's being done and everybody's support has been really nice, and I really appreciate you giving the platform for us to talk about it.
It was definitely my pleasure. Thank you so much, Lisa, for speaking.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for your support and your relentless fight for me. I know you've been fighting us, done everything you possibly can. I thank you so much. Thank you, Lisa.
All right, Dr. Chandra, please.
Mr. Kapoor, thank you so much. This is such a big thing that you're doing. Honestly, my heart goes out to this young lady. I'm very proud of her, though, because despite her tears and everything, she's a fighter. She never admitted, never took a plea deal or did anything. You know, in the face of all this, she could have taken some sort of plea deal, maybe gone on probation or worked out some lenient sentence, but she's sticking to her guns. She did nothing wrong. I do know from her history that she's a police commissioner's daughter and she
Yes.
is a fighter. And I can tell you this, that we have not heard the end of this story. My appeal again to whoever may be listening is the children. I implore you, whoever can help or whatever we can do, that please, please stagger the sentences if they have to go to prison, because those children, honestly, I wish we could show them on this thing. They're so traumatized. They're so regressed. As a psychiatrist, I can tell you, they're really, really in a bad way. They'll need years of therapy and treatment to get over this post-traumatic stress that they're suffering. And I really wish or hope somebody could give us guidance as to how can we appeal to anybody to get their sentences staggered, so that while we are exploring all these other options, that at least those children are not traumatized further. So that is something I'm really concerned about, because once that happens, it'll be so difficult that they will be the real victims. And again, these are born American citizens. It's not that these are Indian doctors, children, or whatever. They're born here, they're brought up here, this is their country. I don't think we should give this sort of injustice to them, that both the parents end up going to prison and they're placed somewhere. Certainly her mother can't take care of them. There's no other family. It'll be a real travesty of justice, much more than it has happened now. So I really am very concerned about those kids.
All right, and like I said, right, I mean, even from this platform's perspective, we are definitely going to reach out to certain people now. I wish, and I hope, again, I want to thank Rishi Kumar as well, the council member from Saratoga, who told me about this story. And the moment he told me, this was something on top of my list, and we had to do this. I wish this had been done a little bit earlier, but it's never too late. We are still gonna reach out to people. We are still gonna talk about it. We're gonna use our social media, power, whatever little power we have, to raise awareness around this, and we're gonna make sure the noise reaches out to the right people. as much as what we can do, in the limited time that we have. And I completely agree. This will not only be an injustice to doctor, but to the children. They have nothing. They're not even part of this, but the suffering will be immense on their part. And you've already, as a psychiatrist, mentioned, the post traumatic impact will definitely take years and years of healing. So will do.
I just want to mention one more thing, and that is API is completely behind Dr. Ganesh, the Federation, Indian Federation of Physicians. Dr. Bayani has mentioned we are behind her. We are going to do everything possible. This is not going to stop here. We want to educate our members. We want to make sure that this does not happen to any other physician. And we are with Dr. Ganesh all the way. I do wish her all the luck, and we are going to support her in every way that we can.
Thank you, Dr. Rakesh Chandra. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for supporting me. And I truly appreciate everything you guys are doing, and Api and yourself. And you've personally spent a lot of time and effort into reviewing all the records and all the due diligence. I really appreciate that. And also, thank you so much for such a compassionate to my children. And I think that's so important. They're being punished in this process, and it's just so heartbreaking to me. Thank you so much for your support, Dr. Chandra. I really appreciate.
You're
Thank
very
you for
welcome.
coming tonight.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, and I'll also, on her behalf as well, like to extend this gratitude to all of you, specifically people sitting on the East Coast. It's almost midnight, and you guys are staying here just to show solidarity and support for Dr.
Thank you so
Ganesh.
much.
So really appreciate that. I personally would encourage all of you to please help spread the word in whatever way and form. It really doesn't matter which country you are right now in. It's very easy to Google out certain things. You can easily find all the information about Dr. Ganesh online, and you can reach out to different email addresses and justice systems, and specifically people in the US. You definitely know who the senators would be. Let's make sure this goes out to them, and if possible, like what Dave has said and some of the suggestions that have come to me, I will do the needful. Whatever needs to be done will happen tonight itself, because every single minute here matters. Every single minute counts here. So, guys, uh, do what you can to help Dr. Ganesh. Last words,
Thank you.
Dr. Ganesh. Yeah,
Thank
before
you
we.
so much. Thank you so much, Kapurji, for taking me. And thank you so much for creating a platform I could bring the guests to speak about the injustice. I thank you so very much. And I
My,
truly appreciate your kindness and support. Thank you so much. And thank you for all the viewers who took time to watch this. And I'm really so grateful to everybody. Thank you.
all right, and I see Dr. Rupama in the chat for sure. So I though she could not make it, I guess, but she is there showing solidarity. I just wanted to highlight that to you as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anupama ji. I really appreciate everything you're doing.
All right. So, guys, that'll be it for this time. I will set up another one, and we'll do a follow up, and we'll have more people. Thank you, Anupamaji. She's saying I'm at work, unable to join. But to all the people who watched and who will be watching, please take this very, very, very seriously, and do support in whatever way and form you can. The GoFundMe link is already there in this, and I will be posting on Twitter, on social media, and anybody who wants to reach out, Doctor, you want to share anything that how they can reach out to you specifically if they have to.
They can reach out to me. I have the GoFundMe account is there. They can also reach out to me, through your link, and you can connect me to the
Sure.
people who want to help me. And please, I'll make sure I post your YouTube site and everything on my thing on WhatsApp and everything else, so we can be connected socially as well. And they can certainly reach out to you, Kapurji, and you can please forward them to me. And if they want to reach out to me personally, I can give you all the information and you can post it online.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Thank
And
you so
Dr.
much.
Dr. Pringle and Equity Docs, these two IDs I'm gonna post. She shared it in the chat. So these are those two handles on Twitter. Whenever you're posting, I will post, and I will make sure you two are tagged. And all of you guys, please let's support. It's not about color. It's not about who or which country of origin any doctor, any human being belongs to, or any color or race they belong to. It's about humanity, and let's support each other, because today it's Dr. Ganesh, tomorrow it could be you. So let's do it for ourselves. Let's do it for each other. Thank you so much. Take care, and I'll see you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much.
All right.
Appreciate. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Good night.
Bye.